Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Margaret Pinard, and you've stumbled upon my channel. So, welcome. You're now on BookTube, in case you didn't know. And we've got a very fun, exciting buddy read book discussion for May of the Moderns tonight. So, that is what is happening. May of the Moderns is the readathon, where all month long we're reading books from the first half of the 20th century after the October period of Victorian England, 1901, to the end of World War II, 1945. And earlier today, we got to hear from Shannon and Ben, who read Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. So tonight, I thought I'd dress up as, I don't know, someone from the period or maybe someone from the book we've read. So we'll get into that in just a moment. I just wanted to give a coming attractions shout out before we begin. Our next thing on my channel is the May Patreon book chat, where I will be hosting JD Estrada from the channel JD Estrada Writer, and we'll be coming on to talk about his new release because he always does something for Mother's Day, which is just the Sunday past. And so hashtag Cheers Mama Estrada, that'll be super fun. So tune in on Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, so earlier for you East Coast peeps. So that's what's coming up, and what's coming up for our guest. So let's hear from our guest, Chrissy at the Return Cart. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. How is everyone doing today? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel, The Return Cart, and what you feature or what you want to do in the future? Writing projects.
So my channel is The Return Cart, and I'm just getting back in the swing of doing regular videos, but I read an eclectic array of books ranging from, right now, historical fantasy has been kind of my jam, but I also do sci-fi, fantasy, and didn't mean to hit myself. And all numbers. Mainly, I actually don't read as many classics, but I'm trying to get more into the classics. I think I read so many classics when I was an undergrad that I kind of was like, and then getting back into it.
Away.
Yeah, exactly. Like hiss and then quickly dodge. I'm currently doing a lot more TikTok, and I'm doing the Raise for Ukraine Readathon, which is a fundraising effort to raise money for UNICEF to go towards helping Ukraine. I'm also working on my own rough draft that hopefully I'm going to be finished with the first draft of it by my birthday, which is at the end of July. So nice. That's my projects.
Sweet. Okay. So check out Chrissy on Book Talk for the fundraiser for Ukraine. Exciting stuff. So I'm going to pop that in the chat.
Also, I can hear my toddler in the background. My apologies. He's like, he will fight the bedtime probably.
He's making a joyful noise. None of us can complain, right? Right? All right. So that is where you can check out if you're on TikTok and Book Talk. Chrissy does a lot more videos than I do. So she's a great resource. Very funny stuff. All the latest trends. I love watching it. So very cool. Lots of
I'm trying to get myself up to do a dance video on TikTok, but I'm not very good at it. So
those are hard.
They are.
Yes. So, and I'll just remind people, since we had this is our second buddy read together. The first one was not Mars Attack.
Red Mars.
Red Mars. Thank you. So I'll pop that up in case people are interested in that. Very different undertaking for us. So we're gonna go from like changing the atmosphere some 200 years in the future of another planet to the classic of All Passion Spent by Vita Sackville-West. And I had been like ferrying back and forth between Vita and Vita, not knowing how to say it. I'm just gonna say Vita now because it's short for Victoria. I read. So yeah.
I went with Vita too. So
cool.
Makes sense to me.
Yay. Okay, good.
Plus, I feel like it rhymes with Pepita, which is her grandmother. So Pepita, Vita.
Mother.
I thought her so. Hold on, I have it up here.
We're looking at like
his
the
mother
short
was
version.
Also named Victoria Sackville-West and was raised in Parisian convent. Vita's
Oh,
mom
okay.
was the illegitimate daughter of the Baron Sackville and a Spanish dancer named uh, Josefa de Oliva. My Spanish is horrid. But she's known as Pepita.
Got it. Okay. So you're right. Grandmother. Sweet. So just sort of the general questions, non-spoiler or anything. Even though the book is 100 years old, so it's hard to spoil anything, but what was your general impression? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Was it enjoyable to read? Are you glad you picked it up? Are you glad I shoehorned you into that spreadsheet while we were live?
I feel like I shoehorned you because I was like, keep me on there. I'm actually glad I read it. I didn't know what to expect when I was going into it, though. I will say I don't like the summaries that are out about this book because I feel like they're misleading.
Okay.
Because
where did you find summaries?
The Goodreads summary was. Let me get it up there because I was a little bit not annoyed, but I was just like, I was tricked.
Okay.
I said, still glad I read it because I think it's a good character piece of Lady Slane.
Yeah.
But on the summary, they talk about.
Is this going to be a spoiler?
It might.
Okay. Do I need to put the spoiler banner up? I don't have one. Let me make.
Oh, so yeah, to put the spoiler banner up because this is going to be a spoiler. Because in the first sentence, it says in 1860, as a young girl, 17. Oh, well, actually, I guess it's not spoilery, but it kind of made it seem like when she's older, she becomes an artist. Like she's an artist in her old age. And that's the impression I got when I read the summary. So I guess I just mistook it because it says at 17 she nurtures a secret burning ambition to become an artist. So I thought that this book was going to be about her becoming an artist again.
Okay.
At the age of 88.
Yeah. I mean, I thought she still had time in all those months, but interesting choice, Vita.
Yeah, Vita. Like, I still think it's good. Like, I think that it's a very interesting character look. Like, I loved seeing what other people were saying about her versus how she actually was and her actual thoughts. Like, especially when it comes to her kids. Like, in the first part, where they're like, oh, mother. What is it? I have a...
Mother's wonderful, isn't
she?
Mother's
wonderful. But also some of them, I was just like, ooh. If I was your mom, I'd yell at you. Like, one of them's like, thank goodness Herbert sometimes remarked, mother is not one of those clever women. I'm like...
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of things put in characters' mouths that showed the character of that character, if that's not too confusing. Like how they looked down on their mother or how they looked, I don't know, whatever in the situation. So I thought that was pretty clever.
It was.
Yeah. I am not sure how I got this book. Oh, it's from Backstory. Okay, so it's from one of my favorite used bookstores, Backstory Books in Portland. And I think I picked it up last year because I was like, oh, it's a modern book. I should get it for the Readathon next year. But I hadn't like looked at the As Seen on PBS thing. There's actually an adaptation from 1986 that I just watched the first 10 minutes of earlier today. And I was like, ooh, I might have to hunt these down on YouTube. It's not.
How was the first 10 minutes?
It was okay. I mean, it's promising. They have Deborah in the first scene and she's not, but so it may not be very faithful adaptation. We were just talking about adaptations earlier, which Nia was there for that chat as well. Obviously, because she hosts what's the name of the series, Nia? Yeah, a Vixen of Fiction is another historical fiction writer. So she's got my back here on AuthorTube about the historical fiction stuff, which is fun. And speaking of which, I sort of dressed up to be representative of Lady Slane because she goes out with her French maid and is swathed in furs. And of course, this is the big picture hat style. So I thought I'd dab a little costuming into this conversation. I'm glad I read it. I read it at the same time as William and Englishman, and I saw a lot of similarities in the writing style. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, we've already touched. I don't know if we were live when we talked about this. Touched on the run-on sentence, and I think it's a period trait. Anybody else see this?
There were some that took up I think probably half a page.
Yeah, okay, I put one down, so page 141, just as an example, because I read this in several sittings, and whenever I came back to it, it was always a little bit of a lurch, coming back to the style. So here's an example. Sitting there in the sun at Hampstead in the late summer, under the south wall and the ripened peaches, doing nothing with her hands, she remembered the day she had become engaged to Henry. That's 4 lines. She had plenty of leisure now, day in, day out, to survey her life as a tract of country traversed, and at last become a landscape instead of separate fields or separate years and days, so that it became a unity, and she could see the whole view, and could even pick out a particular field and wander round it again in spirit, though seeing it all the while as if it were from a height, fallen into its proper place, with the exact pattern drawn round it by the hedge, and the next field into which the gap in the hedge would lead. I don't care. It took me 3 times of being what are we even talking about before I could go, oh, I can skip that. This is just for mind wandering.
Yeah. I have one too right here.
Yes.
And it's, he had passed into the sphere where people marry, beget and bear children, bring them up, give orders to servants, pay income tax, understand about dividends, speak mysteriously in the presence of the young, take decisions for themselves, eat what they like, and go to bed at the hour which pleases them. And I was like, that's a lot. That's a list.
Yeah, so obviously the conventions had changed from, well, not really. I think that's pretty Victorian. I think it's pretty much the same. But, in this period, I think is when they start changing. You start getting short, choppy, or, stream of consciousness, I think, is described in this book, which is interesting. Do you have questions that you want to ask in general from this, or should I just go and then you can jump in?
I'll go and I'll jump in.
Okay. So let's see. Who would you recommend this book to? Who do you think would enjoy it? Out of left field. Crazy question.
I actually think if you're just getting into Victorian literature, I think this is actually a good place to start, because sometimes when I read into the early modern pieces, sometimes those longer sentences in another longer book would leave me huh? But I think Vita actually does a really good job, even with her longer sentences, of not making it too baffling and having to reread it over again. I actually found this an easier read than I was expecting. I was expecting to struggle a little bit more than I did while reading it. So I actually think the pacing is pretty good. I think anyone who likes the idea of someone going against convention, especially during Victorian times, because that's a lot of what this book is Deborah kind of going against what is expected of her in her elder age, going in there. So I think anyone also looking for a character piece, someone deep diving into a specific character, so not only looking at her stream of consciousness, but also what everyone else thinks of her, so that you get a little bit more of a fuller piece.
Yeah, it's a prismatic view, sort of like a character study. Yes, and so just to give a little bit of the premise, All Passion Spent is the character study of a woman named Deborah Slane, Lady Slane. She's not rich, but she's from an aristocratic class, and her husband has just died. He's a politician and diplomat, so she's got some standing to uphold. But you hear about her former life and the choices she's made, and the sort of very end of her life and the choices she makes then, and the important conversations and discoveries that she has. And I thought it was pretty satisfying. I would recommend this to people who like E.M. Forster. I mean, same period, same kind of discovery stuff. People who like, woman's voyage of self-discovery type of thing, but it's very quiet and it's very subtle. There's not too much of the witty banter or humor. It's very dry. That's probably a British aristocracy trait. So it might be a little distant to appreciate, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. You got someone here saying, I should have worn my hat. I know.
I kind of wish I had.
You're welcome. You're welcome to read a modern's book and dress up in the period. So very welcome. What about favorite character?
Probably Mr. Blacktrout.
Bucktrout.
Yeah, Bucktrout. Sorry, I put it as Blacktrout. I don't know why, but Bucktrout. He's the guy who rents this place to Lady Slane. After Lady Slane, like, pretty much pieces out, she's like, you know what? Don't visit me. Don't bring the children. I'm out. And
children are off plan, right?
Yeah, she's like, you guys can visit me every now and then, but don't. And don't bring the grandchildren. Definitely don't bring the great-grandchildren. And then she like shuffles on out of there.
Yeah, so they all live, I guess, in town in the West End and like the hoity-toity end and their various houses because they're like in their 60s. And she's 88. And she decides to, when the husband dies and they leave the big house, she decides to go to Hampstead, which is like the furthest suburb that you can get with, you know, a little village or whatever at that time. And she picks this house. And it wasn't a summary, but it was a some sort of discussion I found about her relating her life to this book. It talked about, no wonder it centers around a house, and it sort of does. I mean, it sort of treats the house at Hampstead as her new environment, her chosen environment, now that she's freed from the shackles of these expectations. And the fact that is important is because this is just when she and her husband Nigel, nope, that's her son. Harold Nicholson. Move into this house that will become Sissinghurst Castle and have this brilliant garden, which is tourable now, and it's like a masterpiece, right? So she really invests her house and her legacy with like this grand vision. And so I think there's like the seeds of that, pun intended, planted with the house in this book, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But yeah, Bucktrout is, I think, one of my favorite characters because there's just something about a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, I think that's probably why I thought it was Blacktrout, because I was like, it reminded me of a fish.
Yeah.
At the end. But he was one of my favorite characters because he's like this conspiracy theorist who also thinks the world's ending soon.
True.
And there's just something in my heart that I was like, I'm glad someone in that, like, she portrays someone in that time period as having those kind of thoughts. She's like, don't worry about rent for the year. Just do it by month because the world's ending anyway.
Yeah. He was a very foolish character, but in a nice way, right? So he understood some of the finer sensibilities because he himself like valued some off culture things. Yeah. And I can't forget the introductory scene where before the main character speaks to him, our first impression of his is of him dancing in the house like a dancing master with a pointed toe and like turning around, and you're like, what is happening? And he's not embarrassed. He's like, so yeah.
He's like, oh, you are here. Cool.
Right? Yeah.
It's the kind of laid backness that I hope to acquire the further I go.
Yeah. What is it? The red and purple, the ladies' hat club. What is it? There's something that is like women of a certain age that have this like purple hat club or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I haven't heard about it for a long time, so I'm misremembering. But yeah, so here I had a funny question actually that I put in a tweet, which was, so this was written in 1931, but it's set in like the 1910s. And I'm wondering if like today's authors who are like, I'm not writing about the freaking pandemic. Don't make me do it. I'm going to set everything in 2019 and call it contemporary. Like, so I'm wondering if Vita Sackville-West sets this novel in the teens and talks about Mr. Bucktrout with this conspiracy theory. It wasn't really a conspiracy theory as far as he knows. The world did end. The Great War was like in a few years. So, I mean, is that her like tricky little giving him more credibility than we think he has at the beginning, you think?
Actually would make
Or is that a
sense
reach? That
because
might be a reach.
like this would be a very, very different book if it was set in the 20s when the Great War is starting. Very
No,
different.
it's ended
Or,
by then. It
it's
ends in
ended by then?
1918.
Okay, so but she wrote it before the Great War starts.
I feel like it's like 1910-ish. Yeah.
1910-ish. Yeah, I don't have dates really well known for wars,
Yeah.
but I do think that she kind of is like no, we're not setting it at the time period of a war, because I think it just would be very different feel to it.
Right.
Because she would have probably some of her kids in that war at that point, or her grandkids, because her kids are in their 60s by the time this book goes.
Right. So Candace is telling us it's the Red Hat Club. It is a thing. My Mima is a member. She used to say that 3 times fast.
Mima.
Nice. Yeah. All right. So you like Mr. Bucktrout. All right. He's a good choice, but I am going to go with Janou for my favorite character.
Janou.
So Janou is the French maid who accompanies Lady Slane to the house in Hampstead. And she's the only person who lives with her and really gets her, because they're both of the same age and they've grown up together since she was married. So for like 60 years, they've been together as employer and employee and have developed a pretty close relationship, although with caveats, as we see by the end, right? And I loved the scene where we're introduced to her, because page 71, I wrote down, one, we get a very identifying scene with her because of 2 details for me. So she's always cold. And actually, I just learned from Elizabeth at Bouquin and Books that there's a word for someone who's always cold, no matter like how many sweaters they put on. And it's friseuse. Je suis friseuse. So I learned like a slang word. Frileuse. Maybe I got it wrong. I just learned it today, so we'll get it in there. But so Janou is this type of person, and she's wearing brown paper in between her clothes, and it makes a specific rustling noise when she comes into a room, because she won't give it up, because this is like something she does to stay warm, as a poor person's avenue to stay warm, because you don't have all like the layers and whatnot. So that was a very specific detail I keyed in on, as well as the jewels. So the husband has just died. The will is going out. In between the will and the moving or whatever, the mother is deciding what to do. And she's got jewels stuck in shoeboxes under her bed instead of having them at the bank. And she just drops them off into someone's hand and says, here, isn't it funny? Janou would always put them in like the flower pot or the water pitcher, because who would think to look there? And they don't care. It's not the altar at which they worship the whole wealth and jewels and valuables and stuff. And I liked that.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good juxtaposition between Lady Slane's view of the jewels and Janot's view of the jewels. Like Janot, she's putting them in places that you traditionally would if you were poor and you had valuables. You put them in places where people don't think to look. Whereas Lady Slane just like hands them over without second thought to one of her kids, and it's like, it's a good contrast, and I think thought processes towards that. Like with how easily Lady Slane gives all that up, you could tell that she was born into this life of privilege, maybe not the richest of lives, but still like always taken care of. Whereas Janou is still wearing paper between her clothes, because you never know.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can be grasping or generous in either of the social classes that are highlighted, right? You could be at Lady Slane's level or Janou's level and have either of those attitudes. But yeah, and it does point out to later, Janou is like, well, maybe you could keep some of the inheritance of this friend or whatever that happens later, because it would be nice. So yeah, she's a little bit on the other side, but I still think
you may want to throw up a spoiler, because I have thoughts on that whole thing when we talk about the inheritance.
Okay, so, well, Let's see, do I have any other questions? No, but before we do that, let me just say, if you're here and you're interested in the readathon, don't forget to like this and maybe do notifications bell or subscribe or something, at least for the month, because we'll be doing plenty more buddy reads with people. And what was the other thing I was going to say about that? I don't know. I had something ready and it'll pop back in my head later. So oh, there we go. The banner. Okay. So like, comment, subscribe, but also I write historical novels. So if you like this classic sort of book, check out the novels. They're down below in the description. Okay, there we go. I remember to do the marketing piece. So let's fling the banner up and tell me what you think about the inheritance. So we'll go back to non-spoilers, but if you want to mute, you can do that now.
Yeah, it's just a really quick thing because Lady Slane gets an inheritance, and I was a little bit irritated that she didn't set any aside for Jeannot.
Yes.
Because I was like, Jeannot has stayed with her for so long.
True.
And taking care of her for so well. And she, like, Jeannot saw her, like, you know, give away jewels and all this kind of stuff. And then she gets this massive inheritance. And then none of it goes to Jeannot. So that's my whole...
Even the fact that she berates herself a little bit when she hears Janu's story of poverty and the fact that she had to go into service because their family didn't have any money, that she was one of 12, she got shipped overseas to be someone as a servant. She reflects on that and goes, oh, I'm just an egotistical old lady. Oh, but I am sort of like Janu because I have given myself up or have effaced myself, like submerged myself for the service of others because of my husband and children. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I get that, but you're not getting the point.
Yeah, like, but at some point you'll have freedom and Jeannot will not.
Right. She's still, she may still hang on for several years and be in penury. You never know. I just want to say hi, JD. He says this is a different hour for a show. Happy I checked YouTube to tag along and see some outfitted goodness. Oh yes, thank you. Doing our best here. Lady Slane, just call me Lady Slane.
So I did, after that, had Native Something. Ooh.
Yeah, Native Sign is on the spreadsheet. I don't know if anyone's reading that specifically, but you can put your name down and then we can watch your review of it for sure.
So I did have a question for you.
Okay.
What did you think about Lady Slane's children as far as like their core personality traits? Because I had a theory as far as like their personality traits that each of them represent a side of both Henry, Lady Slane's husband, and Lady Slane herself.
Oh.
So like 3 of them represent like the personality of Henry, and 3 of them represent the personality of Lady Slane because she has 6 kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids, so it was kind of hard to keep track of them. She notes out all their names and all the in-laws very carefully at the beginning, but it was still hard to keep track for me. There's the people who are like penny pinchers that fit each other so well. The William. There's the Herbert, who's the oldest and who like assumes control and has misogynist views of women that she dances around. I don't like him.
Yeah.
There's Kay, who is the link between the friendship that develops with Lady Slane and
there's
the young son.
Edith.
Sorry,
you're on Kay.
Okay, so Kay is the one of the oddball children that she identifies with. Edith is the other. I like Edith's character, but I wanted her to have more screen time or like page time, I guess.
She really doesn't have a lot.
Edith is the youngest daughter and unmarried, and she's the other one who's the oddball that like gets along with her mother. Who else?
Yeah, Carrie,
who's a busybody who likes to take control of her mother's affairs and feel like she's doing all the stuff and going, oh, this is so tiring. Yes.
Yes, and there's one more, and I forgot what their name is because I don't think they took a lot of screen time.
Right. Okay.
At all. So my apologies, I forgot what their name is. But I remember Carrie, Herbert, William, Kay, and Edith. So yeah, there's one more. I forgot what the name. I know that Mabel is not her child, but it's
Mabel's the wife.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
the wife of
right,
Herbert.
Mabel. That's all she hears. That's actually in the text. It's funny. Like, that's the subtle funny. That's what I can get behind.
Yes.
Let's see. Running to write. 1900s families were way too large. Depends on your economic status, I think. Too many names to keep track of. In terms of the literature, yes, you're right. It's like watching a pastiche of 18th century YouTube. Oh, is this me?
I wish I had a costume now. I feel a little bit left out.
That's okay. Not everyone has a costume closet at their beck and call, so I get it. I didn't want to make it.
I want to.
Okay, what about favorite parts? So I've got lots of notes about favorite parts and like interesting pieces. I talked about the house. I talked about Janu. Maybe the first one that I'll put forward is like love versus manners, because that also had something to do with Janu. In terms of how you love someone versus how you treat them. So you would think that they would be high and high, but it seems like with the children and their mother in this instance, for some of them, it seems to be inverse, because the French servant, is reflecting on the fact that, of course, children love their mother, but they don't treat her very well. And she's indignant at their manners toward their mother. So what did you think about that?
I thought it was kind of sorry, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, because I feel like how Lady Slane portrayed herself to her husband and her kids lent itself to a kind of aloofness to her children. And so in turn, this is why you get a lot of mother's wonderful, but mother's not very clever, and mother doesn't do this. And so they didn't know their mom very well. So it kind of really speaks to like kind of the upper aristocrat kind of relationships that you often see portrayed in stories, movies, and books alike, of where people are held at like further than arm's length.
Right.
And so with Jeannot, that kind of makes sense why she's like, why are they this rude to their mom? Because, you don't have that kind of distance when you're not in aristocracy and upper echelon lifestyle. Like when you're of a poor family, you kind of have to rely on each other. You're it, like you're all you got. So being close makes sense. Because talks about her being in contact with her family still, and when she sees them, it's not for a very long part, but it's a very interesting part. She talks about her sister a little bit, or I think it's through Lady Slane's eyes. Like she talked, it's a singular part. It's not very long, but like how Jeannot interacts with her family there is just very different than how Lady Slane ever acts with her kids, and how her kids act with each other really too. So it seems like a distance kind of thing, like very much based off of class structures,
right?
To me,
like I don't remember when this was. This is probably over 10, 12, 15 years ago. But I remember reading about, as background research, the fact that like what wet nurses were. The fact that it wasn't done for a genteel woman to actually nurse her children, her infants. And I was like, isn't that painful for the mother? Like, what are you doing? But no, they would like farm it out to someone in the village. And I was like, what? How does that make sense? And it's because of this like physical labor thing seen as not genteel or whatever. And so they would keep the mother and the child apart until the child had grown up. Then they knew it was going to be healthy. They knew it was going to survive the infancy stage, and then bring it back and like educate it into the upperclassness. It's just like, obviously, like being torn from your mother and being sent back at 6 years old, you're not going to have like that feeling of bonding. Like, where's the oxytocin?
Yeah, well, and even there's a scene, and I'm going to make this as spoiler free as I can, but there's a scene where it kind of looks back in time of Deborah slain with one of her kids, and someone comes to visit, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," like as if her being with her child is an imposition. Like, is this such a
Oh, as a
private
young
moment?
mom. Yeah.
As a young mom. So like she's looking back at that time, or someone's looking back on that time, and it goes into this like seeing Lady Slane with her young child, and then she's like, "Oh, well, got to put the kid away because someone came and visited." So it's like this very private moment, and it stays private. So there's not really an outward show of love and affection towards her kids with other people. Like, and Lady Slane does talk about like her kids do reminisce back when their mom played with them and stuff. But then you get scenes like that where someone comes in and it's interrupted and then they're put away.
Yeah.
So
it's a very strange way of doing things, but
mm-hmm.
we're a way to judge. I'm sure we do strange things too. And we stare at this tiny little screen for hours every day.
That's true. That
and dance around in front of it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
TikTok dancing coming to a Chrissy channel near you.
Exactly. I think my son probably thinks I am like insane because I do sometimes TikTok videos and I talk about certain books while I'm at home, and sometimes I think he's just like, mother. It's like,
there's I can't remember what her handle is. It's like Single Mom Saga or Single Mom something. And she has really funny ones. Her kid's about, I don't know, 11 or 12. And she'll just be doing this funny stuff and be like, "Hey," and she'll show her son and he's like, "Oh my God." He's at the embarrassment age. It's too funny.
Yeah, my favorite is when parents use the kids' slang in front of the kids, and all the kids are like,
I know.
Like that'll be my favorite thing when my son is older.
That's good. Good to look forward to. No, you didn't miss it. But you have to go to Chrissy's TikTok to catch the book talk. I mean, yeah.
Yes, primarily about books, but there may be dancing in the future. Who knows?
Yeah. What would you say in terms of did it keep you guessing? You said you liked the pacing. Was it unexpected enough to be pleasurable for an ending? What did you think?
That ending was something else. Like it, like that last line, because we talked about it a little bit. So if you read it, you have to tell us what you think about that last line, because it was
that's true.
It was kind of like a what?
The ending scene I thought was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
The choice of giving the last line of dialogue to the character that they did grated on both of our nerves. But I think the last scene was very powerful.
Yes, but I also think that grating on the nerves of who they gave that last line to kind of summarized the feeling throughout that book of people underestimating Lady Slane. And
so it's circling back to the starting point.
It kind of did. And I kind of like, I like it, but I don't like it. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I think it's a really clever line. Don't like the character though.
Yeah. So we do get unlikable characters for sure. I think we get a good diversity of the scale of like good to troubled to annoying to weird. Like we get a good cast of characters to be entertaining, right?
Yeah. So one question to you, because you talked about a little bit of like love relationships with Jeannot and that whole thing. But my question for you is, what do you think about loving someone but not liking them very much?
Oh, love and manners.
Yeah, that love and manners of I love them but I don't like them. So going into the love and manners and thinking about Lady Slane and her view towards her kids.
It depends on what you consider in your definition of love, right? Because if it's mostly duty and it's like, well, I'm related to these people by blood, and so my duty is to stand by them or to rescue them or to whatever, listen to them in times of trouble, something like this, then you don't have to like them, but that's separate. Like, and I can understand that viewpoint. But if it's someone who you've chosen to love, do you not like them? I guess love and like is more of a modern construction. When I think about the difference that Jeannot is highlighting between love she can't conceive of a child that doesn't love its parent, even in their 60s, is what it says. And I thought that was funny because it's obviously the narrator saying, obviously can happen. She just can't imagine it because it's outside of her sphere of existence. Versus manners. And what's funny is that this world is so known, the upper class 1910 world of the UK, London, is so known for its manners. It's so known for all these prescribed ceremonies and invisible lines that you can't cross, and things must be done a certain way and proper, that to have an internal family affair where the manners are, they fall down on the manners, it's kind of like, wow, they're not succeeding in life. Like, that's definitely not the successful character we're supposed to look to. So I like that highlighting of the children who we don't like. Yeah. So I put a question to viewers because I was thinking about this earlier during Ben and Shannon's chat. Does head hopping also seem to be a characteristic of the time in your May of the Moderns read? So Ben responded and said, yes, sometimes bafflingly so. In the Agatha Christie, we were talking about how it sets up all the characters' points of view before the murder even happens. So it's like a very strange, like, where are we going with this? Who's important? I don't even know what's happening. For this one, there's definitely head hopping. And for anyone who doesn't know what this means, it's like when you study literature and you study point of view, when you have multiple characters' minds, like their internal thoughts, I should say. When you're privy to multiple characters' thoughts without changing point of view multiple times in a chapter, several chapters, whatever, we call it head hopping because you're hopping from head to head. And it can be very disorienting or just feel kind of messy because, like, who knows all the internal thoughts? It's kind of like a weird thing. And we're definitely discouraged from writing this way today. So this is why every time I see it, I'm like, allergy to it, you know, but it's definitely a characteristic of the period. So this is what I was curious to see if other reads are similar. Courtney's here. She calls that perspective in her classes. So she's an English professor. So we're getting it from the horse's mouth, if you will. And Courtney is who I read The Edwardians with. So the other Vita Sackville-West book last year. So, Courtney, I don't know if you've read All Passion Spent, but I thought it was much better. So, recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm used to head hopping, it's not so much in the chapter, but like every other chapter, so it's a little bit more organized than what this book is. And granted, I didn't think it was that confusing to different perspective taking. Like, there are some moments where I was just like, wait, who?
Yeah.
But a lot less than I thought there was going to be when I noticed that there was a lot of perspective shifting through.
It wasn't too chaotic.
It wasn't too chaotic, but what I kind of wished for this book was that it would have circled back around to certain characters a little bit more readily. So we talked about, like, Edith doesn't really get limelight. Like, we get like a couple of sentences about her later on, and then that's like kind of it. Like, we hear a little bit about her, but not a lot. And so that happened with quite a few characters that I wished it did. Like, I kind of wished it circled back to them before certain pieces fell into place. Right. Instead, like, they're kind of left a little bit in the dust.
Right.
And that's where I wasn't the biggest fan. I actually didn't mind how she head hopped because, I said, it wasn't that confusing for me. Like, only a few parts where I was like, go back and reread. Yeah. But for the most part, it was actually fairly straightforward.
It wasn't, I guess it wasn't too chaotic because you definitely could tell by the voice, the brain voice. That's kind of a weird way to say it, but it just felt like a transgression because I'm so trained to see it. So that's why I was like, I was like, malfunction.
No, it definitely is something that you don't see in modern literature very often, and if you do, then
convention has changed.
Yeah. So I can see that.
So Courtney says, I haven't read All Passion Spent, but I'm glad to hear you liked it more than The Edwardians. Yeah, both had thoughts about that. JD says, my recent read had different short stories and if POV hops a lot, which was curious. The Lupin short story collection. Oh, right. Yeah. And I actually just commented on this and said that could be a May of the Modern read if you so desired, right? Because Arsène Lupin was, I think, writing, No, Arsène Lupin is the detective. It's Maurice. I can't remember the name of the author now, but yes, 1901 is when the first collection came out, I think. So, and props to the period fashion. Thank you, Hamilton. All right, so we've got. I think we're through most of my questions. I will just remind people that there's a Storygraph challenge, and I could pop that link up. It's a bit.ly link where we're, adding books to the challenge. It's just like read a book from 1901 to 1945 when you're participating. Is this the only one you were going to do this month, or was there one other?
No, I was going to if I can find someone to buddy read, that'd be awesome. I'm going to try and get Rebecca in.
Oh, that is a BookTube favorite, ladies and gentlemen. So if anyone out there,
this would be the first time I'm reading it. Yeah. I've had it for a while, but I haven't read it yet. So if anyone wants to read it with me.
Yeah, contact Chrissy. She is Lost in a Book BRB on Twitter, Instagram, and Book Talk. And I'll just also remind people that she's running a fundraiser for Ukraine on the Book Talk. So, I said us instead of is. Sorry for the typo. So check her out on those platforms if you are there. Oh, and JD is giving us the answer. Marcel Leblanc. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. So we're a little early. Was there anything else? Let's see. I've still got tons more notes if you've still got time.
Can I share one of my favorite parts of this?
Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry. It's early in the book kind of early, but it's when Lady Slane is going off to Hampstead and is telling her kids about it. And she tells people, I'm going to wallow in old age. No grandchildren. They're too young. Not one of them has reached 45. No great-grandchildren either. That would be worse. I want no strenuous young people who are not content with doing a thing, but must needs know why they do it. I just like that part because I was like, that sounds like such a crotchety old person saying, and I can appreciate it.
But why? Yeah. Missy Fatigo. Yeah. I liked. Did you like the French in there, or was that annoying? Did you have to like?
It wasn't annoying. I actually think usually in this time period when people put different languages, they don't really put good context. But I actually think Vita does decent context for what Jeannot's saying. So even though it's good for you to look it up, it's not like the most vital for you to look it up because you get good context to what she's saying.
Right. Good deal. So I had one on page 132. We're in Lady Slane's head, and she's thinking about her husband telling other people about her that she was the most intelligent woman he'd ever known because she'd never said something foolish. And that just harkened back to nothing ventured, nothing gained, because she's lived this life in secret, submerging herself. And that's the notoriety that she gets, is that she's the most intelligent woman he knows because she's never said a foolish thing, because she always toes the line and says something safe. And I'm like, that is not my philosophy. But what do you guys think? Agree or disagree? Intelligence, foolishness. I think they go hand in hand. Dare, right? Dare. Dare greatly.
Yeah, dare greatly. I actually think that's just... that kind of just brings up misogyny of that time period, because they talk a little bit about how, because Lady Slane always said what was safely, she also was like, I'm not a feminist, and just went on this whole thing. But there's all these other ladies who would be lively and talking, and then there's Lady Slane who would most of the time just listen. And so that's what she was also known for, is not only just saying stuff that's safe, but just listening. So letting other people talk.
Yeah, and I guess the counterexample, when I think of the Edwardians, what I remember from that is there was a lot of gossip and inane talk. And it was de rigueur, right? It was everyone was expected to keep up this gossipy trash talk. And if you didn't, you weren't in the friend group. And I'm like, that is not how I want to live either. So I know, somewhere between the two.
Well, and also Yes, stinks like the patriarchy sweaty pits. It does. But not only does it speak to kind of people's view of her, but also she didn't even speak to her mind, I don't even think, to her husband. Because at one point, she kind of ponders upon how she wished she had asked his opinions, and she never does. So she never really even has like a back and forth conversation with her husband, because she's like, I wonder what he thinks of the kids. I never asked. Like,
That's
never
so
asked his
crazy,
thoughts. And
right?
I was like, I like my poor husband, like he has questions all the time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. But that's, like you were saying before, that's a level of intimacy that is so modern, because everything back then was at a distance. And I'm not sure why. Like, that's got to be a sociological, historical question of like, why was that looked up to? I don't know.
Yeah, why was that the norm? Why was like not
Or
being
like the aspirational goal is having distance and comfort, like bumpers around you, you know?
Yeah, and not showing too much emotion, because in this book, like the minute someone shows like too much, it's like, oh well, they're just a little bit too much. Like, that's, bring it back.
Right. Do you follow Elise Myers?
Yes, I love Elise Myers.
So she has a short. She just had a video that she put out that she says, "Oh, I'm too much. Go find less," and that's like, "Go find less. Go find less," right on the shirt. And I was like, "Yes. Oh gosh, that's good."
Yes, Elise is great. I love her energy.
Yes. Page 164, she's talking about her husband, Henry. He was not to blame because he was just conforming for defrauding her of her chosen life. And this again gets to your thing of like, you wouldn't even ask his opinion because you don't want to disagree.
Yeah.
So you're going to anticipate his thought and pretend that that is what you think, so that you avoid any possible conflict. And it's like, what? What?
Yes, I'm trying to find if I highlighted it, but there's this part where she talks, where she ponders upon when she was 17, when she's first getting married, and how she wanted to be an artist, right? And she thinks about that time period, and she's like, me getting married, is that going to change me being an artist? And she's like, probably, but I still want to be an artist, so how can I do that while still being married? And there's this moment where she starts to talk to her husband about it. And she's like, well, I would still like to paint. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. We'll like get you hooked up with a little bit of paint, and like this really like
condescending,
dismissive attitude towards her art. And she's like, no, I want to paint. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And then she never brings it up again, because that's kind of the conversation, that very condescending moment.
There's yeah, okay. And so here's one of my negative points, page 289 at the very end. Achievement was good, but the spirit was better. Agree or disagree? So this is something that I feel like I would disagree with the moderns on. The achievement of one's goals, and this is because I'm a contemporary rather than a modern, right, is good, but the spirit of the age, the, I don't know, inclination and feeling of the artistic fire within you, that was more important. And I'm like, well, you have to have one to do the other, and one is unexpressed and one is like, you get shit done. So guess which direction I'm inclined. I'm biased, you know? Agree or disagree? Audience, let me know.
Oh my gosh, I feel like that harkens back to this thought process of I was thinking about this with a whole other book, is the suffering in silence is glorified. And in this book in particular, that like that sentence kind of sums it all up. It's a glorified, like, she had the spirit of an artist, and then like one character's like, yes, I can see that in you. How she doesn't do anything to showcase it,
right? And what kills me, and I'll pop this up just in case. What kills me is that at the end, she's like considering being a painter and how she wanted to do that all her life, and then doesn't go after it, and just like indulges her painterly fancies rather than trying anything. And I'm like, but are you really getting into the self-realization if you're just saying, oh, I'm going to be an eccentric person on the Hampstead Heath? Like, that's going to satisfy my 88th year and we're all good. I'm like, hold on, lady. Like, what?
Toss that.
Right. Toss
Like,
that.
like, I actually, maybe this book is
bin.
why I've been so determined to get a first draft done, because I read it and I was like, you know what? We're not doing that. We're not going into my 88th year being like, I have the soul of a novelist.
Right. Courtney is joining me here. Achievement.
Yes.
We're more than spirit. Yeah. GDC's I'd rather have my cake and eat it too, i.e. give me both. See?
Yeah, have the spirit and achieve.
And Courtney says that appeals to the pragmatist in me, aligning your actions with your beliefs. Is that pragmatism? I think you've gone deeper in depth in the definition of pragmatism and months ago. I think I remember you talking about that, and I don't have that grounding in the actual terms, so maybe I need help on that. But ooh, that was triggering. When I read that, I was like, no.
So I think not. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so we talked about yes. Let's see, self-submerged. Oh, okay. So the last point I have, page 286, also right near the end. So this isn't a spoiler. The younger great granddaughter, who's also named for her, so Deborah, comes in, and she has this sort of opening moment that shares with her great grandmother that she's sort of taking the path that she didn't, which is nice. It sort of again brings it full circle. And she describes the fact that all the people in the family are practical minded and they're like cement. And I liked that metaphor. But she has the feeling that her great grandmother and others that she knows that have that artistic temperament spirit are, quote, scattered, lonely people. Only they recognize each other when they see each other. And I thought, that is beautiful. Like, I really liked that sentiment because it feels like what we do when we search for community as artistic folks trying to do a creative sideline or whatever. And yeah, that's the author tube, the book tube, like the community that's on here, like looking for people who are working towards those goals and like cheering each other on. And so scattered, lonely people that recognize in each other that fire within. I'm like, yes, this is what I can get behind. Go people. What'd you think of that part? Did it stand out to you, or?
It stood out to me in a little bit of a different way. In that I focused on a particular thought that Deborah had, the older Deborah had towards her granddaughter, and you might want to throw up a spoiler for this.
Okay.
But it's when she eliminates. So there's a quote before she has a talk with her great granddaughter, and it is, first she had refused to see them. So Lady Slane refusing to see her grandchildren and great grandchildren, and then she had eliminated their future, the possibility of great and easy wealth. Mm-hmm. She must appear to them as an incarnation of egoism, and so I kind
incarnation of what?
Egoism.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Must meaning like she's trying to think what they think of her, and that's
so she's thinking, they probably look at me like I'm this huge egocentric person. And so I kept that in mind because when she's talking with her great granddaughter, she's like, oh, I could have funded your art,
right?
And
but so that's not what she's thinking.
Yeah, but that's not what Deborah's thinking. But at the same time, I thought that for younger Deborah, I was like, you could have.
Same as Janu. You're like, oh man, missed opportunity.
And maybe that's just because, like, I think that's that classism that comes in again, is that Lady Slane's not thinking about like the future of her kids or great grandkids, because she knows they're taken care of. Like she knows decently that they're gonna be okay. Like they come from this family of achievement and wealth, but she didn't think about that particular thing. And I'm just like I don't know. I think my mindset has changed a lot because, before I had my son, I was like, gotta do it on your own. But now, like, I have my little son, he's only 2, but I'm already like, how can I ensure his future?
No. Yeah. Everything changes.
But I did like that line that you had put out, is the souls finding each other. I did think that was beautiful. It's just I had kept that other quote in the back of my mind when she was
Yeah, yeah. We'll spoil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fly in the ointment, if you will.
Yes.
Well, can't have everything. All right. Well, we're going to wind up at the end of the hour here. Thank you all for joining us. We'll continue to have buddy reads. If you are interested, check out the spreadsheet below, because I will be putting the links to all the discussions like this one on the spreadsheet lined up with the book. You can also find them in the playlist for May of the Moderns. So this one's in there already. So if you're on the playlist watching, you're a superstar.
I'm just saying, buddy read.
Yay! And yeah, Chrissy's looking for a buddy read for Rebecca, which I don't think is too long of a book. It's like 300.
Yeah, it's like 330. Whoops.
And it's like
very
suspenseful, and so I'm sure you'll be like page turning. So it should be a good read. So
yes, I've heard so much about it, but I have never read it.
I know, it's a favorite. So I'm sure I'm sure it'll be good. I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Oh.
So thank you so much, Chrissy, for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Fun reading this book with you.
Yes, thank you for always buddy reading with me.
All right.
I can't wait for our next one.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye.